All right, here we go. So let's get into this. Hi, everyone. A lot of you may know me. My name is Josh. And if you only have 25 seconds, if you have to leave in less than 30 seconds, I want to give you something, probably the most important thing. So if you have to leave in 25 seconds, here's the one thing you need to know about having first conversations. And it is this: talk less. Now, a lot of you, that's a new concept. Like, what do you mean? Aren't I supposed to be the one talking during these first conversations? So people ask me, like, well, how do I do that? And in order to practice it, I want you to just practice being curious. This is going to help you a lot during first sales conversations. A lot of times when I say this, people say, well, how do I become more curious? And this is a great way to practice. During your next conversation with anybody, whether that's a colleague at work, your spouse, or even a prospect, I only want you to ask questions for the first 5 minutes like a 5-year-old. This is going to start to practice and build your curiosity skills. There are 4 things that are going to help you get the most out of this session today. The first one is this. If you are listening to this webinar, you're watching it, and you're like, hey, I'm not a sales consultant. These questions won't work for me. This framework won't work for me. I want you to stop yourself and think, how might I take the ideas that I'm hearing and apply this to my business and my prospects? If you're hearing yourself think this, why should I listen to him? You absolutely should not listen to me. I don't have a silver bullet. These are things that have worked really well for me in my career and the clients that I have. Take what I'm talking about and pretend it's like a little jelly bean that you want to try out. And over the course of your career, you will collect these little jelly beans from people like myself, and you will create your own jelly bean jar of your sales philosophy. Next, you might be thinking to yourself, I tried these things. I tried first sales conversations, and I really suck at it. If you hear yourself saying that, I want you to stop yourself and think, what's one thing that I did really well? And what's one thing that I would do differently next time? How do you do this? Just record all your conversations going forward, even if you use just your iPhone. It's a great way to make yourself better. Next, you might think to yourself, I've been selling for 15 years, 10 years, 7 years. I already know all this stuff already. And so in that case, what I would say to you is this. Can I reinforce this? Can I go a little bit deeper? So by way of example, you may have seen this if you've been in my previous webinars. This is a guy named Andy Riley. He writes a book called The Bunny Suicides. It's a book about, you guessed it, ways in which bunnies can commit suicide. So this was his first volume that he wrote, just a little screenshot. But he didn't stop there. He went a little deeper and came up with another volume called The Dawn of Bunny Suicides and other creative ways to have bunnies committing suicides. As you can see this one on the San Andreas Fault. And he went even deeper still and created another volume. The point here is that you can always learn more. You can always be deeper on any given topic. Ouch. Let's get into it. With regards to first sales conversations, here's some of the things that I hear all the time. 1, I get ghosted, meaning I have these first sales conversations and I think we can really help this company. And I think things are going really well, but then I get ghosted and people disappear. People end up chasing. They have these great first conversations and then they keep chasing for a next meeting. Sometimes they feel that conversations don't feel natural and they feel a little bit out of control. The cause of this ghosting is only one reason. You're just not that interesting to the person that you're speaking with. You're interesting to you perhaps, but not to the other person, which is why they're not getting back to you. Every single time you get ghosted, point the finger back at yourself and start to question about what you could have been doing to be a little more interesting. And we're going to talk about specifically what that means. Next, you might be barking at print. I hear this a lot. You've read a sales book on how to do first sales conversations, and you're just going through the questions like spin selling. I call it barking at print. You're kind of reading the questions, but you're not exactly sure why you're asking them and why you're asking them in the order you're asking them. So you come across as robotic. 3, because you don't have a structure or a game plan for how to lead an initial conversation, you're winging it. And the biggest one that I hear oftentimes when I ask people how they learned how to have a first sales conversation, it's always around some type of a selling process, like spin selling. But it's never around how people buy, which is what I'm going to show you today. So what you're going to learn today is a few foundations with regards to how I want you to approach these initial sales conversations from a mindset and skill perspective. And then we're going to get into a conversation framework that'll feel very natural. And then I have an offer for you at the end that's free if you want to improve your conversation skills and ultimately close more deals. So let's get into foundations. Number one is this. Imagine for a second that you were going to hire a personal trainer. And the personal trainer on the left, when you showed up for the first day, they said this: what do you want to do? The personal trainer on the right said this: based on your goal and my assessment of you, this is your workout plan. You would probably choose the personal trainer on the right, because the personal trainer on the right is coming across as an expert practitioner. So principle number one is this: a waiter takes orders. A personal trainer has a perspective on how to get you from where you are to six-pack abs. And I want you to have this mindset on these first sales conversations of being the personal trainer and not the waiter. People do not want to buy from personal trainers who are asking them what the workout should be. They want to be led to better by an expert. Principle number two, let's imagine for a second there are these same two personal trainers and you are training for a race. And on the left-hand side, you ask the personal trainer about VO2 max. And he says, well, I'm not really too familiar with that test. But the personal trainer on the right says, you know, Josh, we could certainly talk about that, but do you know the difference between VO2 max and an FTP test as it relates to your goal with his triathlon training? The personal trainer on the right has my attention because he knows his domain and he's an industry expert. You have to be an industry expert. You have to know more about your prospect's industry than they do, so you sound like the personal trainer on the right and not on the left. I don't want to be around or hire or do business with the blue personal trainer. How do you do that? Try this. It's a product called Feedly. It's about $10 a month and allows you to subscribe to all sorts of industry expert publications. So here's a snapshot of mine. I subscribe to a lot of sales stuff, as you can imagine. And every morning I skim through it to stay up to speed. What are you doing to become more knowledgeable in your prospect's industry than they are? You may not be doing enough. Number three, my grandma's toaster. It sucked. Only one side worked. The toast was always light. But despite that, I could never sell my grandma a new toaster. These are the benefits that I saw. Grandma, it would be faster. It would be darker. Even though there was benefits to the toaster that I was trying to sell her, those were not benefits to my grandma because she saw this. If I got a new toaster, it would be slower because I'd have to learn a new toaster user interface. And I don't care about dark toast. I only prefer light toast. And my toaster's free because I've already paid for it. So although your product has benefits and value propositions that matter to you, until you get your prospect to talk about what matters to them, those benefits do not matter. Your benefits only matter if they matter to your prospects. So when we go through the conversation framework, you're going to learn a way to be able to bubble up what matters most to your prospect and then position accordingly. If your product has 7 or 8 or 10 benefits and only 2 or 3 matter to your prospect, don't talk about the other 8 because they'll think they're overpaying for stuff that they don't need. Number 4, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. This is one of those mall kiosk people that sometimes lock eyes with you and say, can I ask you a question? And how do you feel when people say that? You probably want to run in the opposite direction. That's because there's this pressure when you're trying to move faster than your prospect is willing to go. It's almost like being on a first date with someone and saying, can I meet your parents? And yet that's what we come across as salespeople all the time. You sound like that mall kiosk person trying to move faster than your prospect is ready to move. And that's what makes people ghost you. So if someone were to say to you on an initial sales conversation within a minute, that sounds interesting, we're looking for something just like this, why are you different? Your inclination would probably be to go into pitch mode. Oh my gosh, they're so interested. I better sell. What I'd like you to do is to lean back and say something like this. Happy to tell you, but I don't want to assume why I think we're different matters to you. So would it be okay if I ask you a few questions first? Or, hey, you only have 5 minutes. Can you give us a quick demo? A lot of salespeople would say, gee, we'll cram it all in 5 minutes. Lean back, and instead, don't be the mall kiosk person. You might want to just repeat their last 3 words. That's a great way to get people talking more. Try this. Anytime you're talking to anyone, just repeat back their last 3 words and watch them keep talking. That's a tip from Chris Voss. So we only have 5 minutes. Can you give us a quick demo? A quick demo? And then they'll keep talking. And then you might say something like, here's the thing. I'm giving a demo before I understand your situation would do you a disservice. It would waste a lot of your time because I'd probably be blabbing about things that might not matter to you. Would it make sense to reschedule? Notice what I'm doing here. I'm taking the role as the personal trainer. I'm not getting pushed around. I'm an equal footing as my prospect. So I want you to detach from the outcome. The objective of the call is not to get the sale. Number 5. Well, Josh, what is the goal of having a conversation? Like, what's the goal? What are we doing here? When I ask this question, these are the top answers I get. To get a sale, to get the next meeting, to get a demo, to get to yes, to qualify them. These are all things that you want. But guess what? None of these are things that your prospect wants. Not one of them. And so what we need to do here is adopt the buyer mindset. And the buyer mindset is this. The only reason a prospect is talking to you, the only reason, is to see if you can help them kick more ass or be more awesome at something. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by that. Some of you may be familiar with this if you've been in my previous webinars, but it bears repeating because it's so important. If you remember Mario from Mario Brothers, Mario on the left-hand side would jump on a flower, and that flower would give him the fireball that would allow him to kill the monsters. That fireball let him kick more ass or do something better. In this case, kill the monsters. Your prospects are like Mario. Your product or service is like the flower. And the awesome thing that your prospects can do as a result of getting your thing is the fireball. The only thing your prospects are interested in are fireballs. To just drive this home, I'm going to show you a picture and a slogan. And I want you to ask yourself, is this a flower or fireball? So here we go. The Yeti tumbler is insulated with 3 layers of ceramic Plyotex. Flower or fireball? That is 100% a flower. And yet this is how often we talk, right? So a fireball would be keep hot things hot and cold things cold, right? Another example of a zoom lens, telephoto zoom lens, optics, fluorite, whatever all that stuff means. That's a flower. A fireball helps you take better pictures of your kids playing sports. You have to have crystal clear clarity on how you help your prospects kick more ass, right? So there's 4 ways you can help people kick more ass. Let's go through it, right? Way number 1 is this. Let's say, for instance, that I'm a triathlete, which I happen to be, and I want to finish a triathlon. So there's me coming across the goal line. That is my goal. That is how I want to kick more ass and be more awesome. That vision I have of myself crossing the finish line. That's the fireball. Now let's say, for instance, I was going along and I got a flat tire. One way a salesperson could help me in this case is to say, you know what, I'm going to fix your flat tire and get you on your way to the finish line. So way number 1 is get people away from something they don't want. This is what's often called a pain. Here's the problem, people. Most people don't have pains when they talk to you. Only about 10% do. You might be thinking to yourself, well, how am I supposed to sell if there's no pain? Remember, this is only just way 1. Way 1 is I've got something and I need to fix it. My air conditioner is broke and I need to fix it. This is when people are really down the funnel, really far. They're probably looking at 5 or 6 competitors already. And less than 10% of the people you talk to will have flat tires. Way number 2 is this. And this is where the magic is. Let's say I'm doing a triathlon again, a little bit longer distance this time, and I have the same fireball. I want to cross the finish line. And I don't have a flat tire. Everything's fine. I go into the bike store just to get a checkup. And the salesperson in the bike store says this. Hey, Josh, I noticed that you have these ordinary tires on your bike. Are you familiar with the difference between the ordinary tires you have and these gator skin tires we have over here and how they affect your triathlon time? What are gator skin tires? Oh, those are tires that don't get puncture wounds. Hardly ever. So you don't have to waste time changing your tires and ruining your time. Yeah, I'll take some of those. Way number two is what really great salespeople do. They start to not ask for problems. They find problems by bringing things to people's attention that they may not have considered before. Very powerful. Teach people what's possible. Everybody always wants to get better at something. Some people may not know problems even exist until you bring it to their attention. Very powerful in a sales conversation as we get to the framework. 90% of the people you talk to will be very open to new ideas and new perspectives if you phrase the question properly, like that salesperson did in the bike store. Way number three is this. I want new tires. Josh, you're only doing a sprint triathlon. The tires you have are perfect. So not selling anyone anything, but taking the higher ground and again, doing what's in the best interest of the prospect to play the long game. That gives them the fireball. You don't make any money, but you recommend they do nothing. And I do that all the time. And every single time people come back and tell how appreciative they are, and it always comes back. And the final way is this. People want to buy something that's overkill. So the wheels we sell here, Josh, they're overkill. What you need are these other wheels, but we don't sell them. So try this other place up the street. So way number four to help people be more awesome is, again, not to sell them anything, but to actually point them somewhere else. So if we take a look at all the ways we're going to be able to help people be more awesome as we get into the framework, these are all the ways. And notice, none of them involves selling anything. They all involve helping someone be more awesome. And if you don't get that in your head, what does it mean to be awesome? For my product, it's going to be a really tough battle for you. You have to be able to articulate what's the before and what's the finish line. What's the Yeti mug? What's the warm things warm and cold things cold for my business? Helping your prospects get clarity on their fireball will differentiate you from your competition. What do I mean by that? I was on a call last week with a prospect that's now a customer, and they came in and they said, I want this. I want to increase cold outreach response rates. Now, is that a fireball or a flower? That's a flower. So I said, well, what will that do for you? And they said, it'll get us more meetings. Again, a flower. And so I asked, and what will more meetings allow you to do better? And they finally said, get more revenue. Turns out in order to get more revenue, that's really the fireball that we help them realize. And increase in cold outreach response rates is really down on the list, right? Can you get more opportunities in your pipeline unstuck? Can you convert more conversations you're already having into customers, right? These are all ways to help you get the fireball, but not around the thing you were asking for. So make sure when you're doing these customer conversations and people are asking what they want, are they asking for a flower or are they asking for a fireball? And if they're asking for a flower, helping them realize what the fireball is can really differentiate you from the pack. Okay, here are the foundations we just went through. Be a personal trainer, not a waiter. Know the industry better than your prospects. Benefits only matter when they matter to your prospect, and your role is to guide people to being more awesome, even if that doesn't involve you or your service. Now let's get into the actual conversation framework. Here we go. First thing is, we have a step before we actually start talking, a confirm step. So somebody agreed to have a meeting. What do I do before the meeting? Well, I want to be likable, right? Like the personal trainer. I want to be likable. So one of the things that people can do to increase response rates before meetings, these are what top SDRs are doing, is they're sending these little video voicemails prior to the meeting to connect with people and remind them of the value they're going to be getting out of the meeting, the fireball. So here's an example from Claire from a company called Flow. And by way of context, Claire was in college. She had her period, didn't have any tampons, and decided that she didn't want any other college student to ever happen that again. And so she created a company where she provides tampons to colleges, and they have them in restrooms just like they would toilet paper. And she set a meeting with a university, and here's her confirmation message that she puts out there before the meeting.
ICCAD, we have so many tampons and pads waiting for you guys. So we're really excited to regroup, have this conversation, and help your school join the menstrual movement and if it makes sense for you guys. Give us an email back. Let us know what you're thinking. We're really excited to help you change the world one cycle at a time. Talk with you soon. Bye-bye.
This idea of building credibility, does that. There's another idea. This is the bottom of an email footer that I have when I send a meeting confirmation. It doesn't sell, but it shows all the things that I've been writing. Why do I do that? Because I want to be perceived as the personal trainer that's an expert. So what can you do in your initial outreach so that when they get on the call, you're already in a one-up position? I use a product called Calendly that automatically sends reminders to the prospect a day before and 15 minutes before the meeting. And you can see I tweaked the message on the left-hand side in a very humble way. I'm sending you this reminder because the sales book said I should be sending you reminders. Again, a way for people to smile and increase my likability a little bit. Next, prepare before the meeting, right? Prepare. Why? Remember that personal trainer, that green personal trainer. This is what it sounds like if you were an unprepared salesperson or a waiter. You'd start the call by saying, "How are you doing today?" It's going to make you sound like that waiter. You might start off by saying, "How many SDRs do you have?" That's going to sound like a waiter. If you're prepared, you might be able to say something like this. "Hey, I was peeping your About Us page, and it looks like you have 5 SDRs. Are they all located in San Francisco, or are some in New York?" This makes you come across like the personal trainer and not the waiter. How do you prepare? Take a look at their website and see if you can't glean how they're currently solving the problem, which would allow you to ask a question like this. I notice you folks are using paid advertising. How's that been working out for you? Seen a positive ROI or return on the ad spend? What can you glean from your prospects' business in terms of how they're solving the problem that you might be able to help them solve, and use that as we start our initial sales conversations? LinkedIn's a great one. This is just a profile of a prospect I was meeting with. I noticed that she started out in law and then became VP of sales. So I started my conversation with, "Laura to VP of sales, how on earth?" Great way, much better than "How was your day?" Google past month. So Google the company and use the filter last month over here where it says past month and see what recent news was coming up. And you'd be able to ask smart personal trainer questions like this. "Congrats on the 20 mil. Based on what I read, it looks like you're using it to enhance the platform. Do I have that right?" Twitter's also great. Notice that this person was doing a 10-day retreat. Again, a really great way to show that you're the personal trainer and connect. Okay, the conversation framework itself. Now we're actually on the call. Conversations happen over the span of multiple conversations. I'm going to be showing you this framework, but it happens over the course of many dates or many different times. And they all start off the same way with something called a C, which is a connect. So the second you get on this call, the second your prospect picks up, we want to connect with them. Why is that? Well, take a look. Say we have 2 personal trainers and they're both awesome and equal. But one of them you just don't like, and one of them you just like more. They made you laugh, they made you smile, you just like them better. When all things are equal, you're going to choose to do business with the person or the personal trainer you like. And that's what this whole connecting thing is all about at the beginning of the call. So what does fake connecting sound like? This is an actual recording from a waiter salesperson.
Josh, this is here. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Yeah, I actually I had tried calling the number that you had left in the market analysis form that didn't go through, and luckily I saw there was an alternative number here in your email signature.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad we connected.
Yeah. I tried 6401, and apparently that's not an active number. So I see you got 6402. Maybe that was a typo.
Yeah, typo for sure.
All right, cool. All right, good. So I'm glad I was able to connect with you. How are you today?
My goodness, don't do that. No reason for it. Spend 5 minutes, 8 ways to connect. Some ones that I've used. Notice how long they've been at the company, right? Notice you've been at Deloitte for 15 years. What's kept you there? Or notice you're a newbie. Out of all the places to work, why Deloitte? Noticed you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Why on earth? Saw at the Christmas party you were wearing red pants. Does everyone wear red pants? Impressive client roster, VP of Sales. What makes you such a badass CEO? Notice you spent some time in Austin. Me too. Did you love it? Never been to Colorado. Convince me why it's so amazing. Curious to know how or if things changed after the merger. These are all great ways to start those first initial 5 seconds so you don't sound like that waiter salesperson. If someone responds and says, I'm having a frazzled day, don't just go to the next question. What might you say if someone says, I'm having a frazzled day? What might you say? Anybody type into the chat there. What might you say? Got some couple in there. Yeah. I love it. That's exactly it. Having a frazzled day. Now, this is a technique I'm going to use, right? We talked about this before. Just repeat the last 3 words someone said and let them keep talking. So many times I'm listening to conversations where people give you something, you just keep rolling. So don't think about what you're going to say next. Just concentrate on what they're saying and just stay in the conversation, right? Just stay in it. People ask me like, well, how long should that go on? As long as it goes, man. As long as you're feeling it. There's no rush. You don't have to have all these conversations in one conversation. So that's the C. Next thing we're going to do to come across like a personal trainer and not a waiter is we're going to frame the call. We want to lead the call. We're not going to ask people, what do you want to talk about? That's like a personal trainer saying, how do you want to work out today? So this is how you frame it in a professional way. Chris, thanks for carving out some time today. I believe we have 30 minutes. Do I have that right? Pause. And then some version of this for your company. Let me kick us off and take a couple minutes to tell you how we've helped sales managers be more awesome and why we're different. Just 2 minutes. And then I'd like to turn the tables and ask you a few questions to understand more about your situation. And if, not when, if I think we can make a recommendation, I'll do so. And after that, you can decide if you want to continue the conversation. People decide to buy for their reasons and on their timeline, not yours. So part of our approach when we get to the end of the conversation is to test to see if the prospect would like to continue talking with us, not dictating to them that we want another meeting. We're not going to ask them to give us a decision on the first date. That would be like saying on the first date, hey, at the end of this date, can you tell me if you want to have a second date at the beginning of the date? It's awkward, right? Chris, that's what I was hoping to do today. Anything else you'd like to cover? So you'll write a version of this for you. And after that connecting phase is over, you're going to transition into this. If you just did the C and the A, you're automatically going to notice that you're going to feel much more in control. Automatically, if you just worked on your confirm, your prepare, your C, and your A. Next is S. S stands for situation. In order for us to recommend anything, we have to understand where people are, what's going on in their world. And one of the first questions that I love to ask to be able to suss this out after my A is some version of this. Hey, I know I reached out to you, but of all the people you could be meeting with, what prompted you to want to chat with me today? Now, obviously, if this is an inbound, you might say, what prompted you to want to meet with us today? And they'll start spilling it. And you might repeat their last 3 words, and you might get all the information you really need in terms of their current situation out of this just one question. But if you don't, and people aren't divulging to you what's going on, you might start to ask some questions of yourself. Now, here's a red one. And the reason it's red is because it's a waiter question, right? Because I can research this before the meeting. Never ask a question that you can find out for yourself, ever. That's why this is red. Instead of asking, where is your SDR team located? That's a situation question. I might say like this, right? Tell me about your SDR team. Looks like they're located in Chicago, Austin, and Berlin. Trying to get a sense of their current team and their current situation, taking advantage of the research that I did. I might also ask, what are you folks currently doing to whatever the thing is that you help people do better? In my case, set meetings. Next thing is we have to see if there's a way for us to get them away from something they don't want or move them towards something that's possible. So these are opportunities. I don't like to call them problems because remember, only 10% of the people you speak with have a problem. but they always are open to new ideas and perspectives for helping them do something better. So I'm calling them opportunities, right? So I learn a little bit about their situation and what they're doing. I might say, so how's that going so far? And they may tell me, oh, terrible. And I want to listen. Are they trying to move away from something, or are they trying to move towards something? Is there negative energy? Oh my gosh, we are getting killed with regards to revenue. Or is it more up energy? We're doing awesome, but we want to do better. We want to go from 30,000 to 35,000. If you're not getting anything, you can try one of these opportunity pulling questions, one of my favorite ones, right? Look at this kind of a question, right? Typically, the people that I work with tell me three things. Their SDRs aren't setting 20 meetings per month. The ramp time's taking too long. They're not sure how to improve their cold calling skills. Do any of these things resonate with you? So this is a question where you are trying to have a hypothesis based on the people that you're working with of things they might be able to keep doing better. So if you're not getting any information, you may have to sort of hypothesize about the things that you help people with. Now, here's the thing. This is like a metal detector. If it's not going off and it's not beeping in the O, the conversation is over. If you can't get your metal detector to beep, and beeping means you're not talking, they're talking, and you're saying the last three words and tell me what you mean by that, and there's energy behind the thing they want to get away from or what they want to move towards, and they're just flat, oh, I don't know, I don't work on that. Oh, that's not my responsibility. I don't really have anything to do with that. I would get off the call and say, looks like the types of things we do aren't a fit for you, but if these things ever bubble up, it might make sense to talk. Or is there some other people in your organization that you think might be challenged with some of these things? But it's perfectly okay to end a first date early to save time. Next is summarize. So after you've learned a little bit about your prospect situation and you've heard a little bit about what they want to get away from or what they want to move towards, you want to make them feel heard. So pause before you pitch and summarize what you heard. You might say something like this: it sounds like, and you want to use their words, not your words. And if you do this right, and this is how you know it's time to move forward, you'll hear this. Some version of this. That's right. It's like you work here. You got it. You got it. You understand me. This is a marker for you at this point in the conversation. If you're not hearing that's right after you summarize, something's wrong and back up. Don't proceed. It's a checkpoint for you. After the summarize, and after they say that's right, we're going to now build a little more credibility like the personal trainer. We're not going to talk about our product or service, but we are going to talk about it in the context of how we've helped someone else. Call this the customer story. You know what you told me? I hear it a lot. It's very similar to someone else I was working with, another manager just like you. She's finding it difficult to get more sales qualified leads, especially in an untapped market like you said, and how to best improve her team's cold calling skills, specifically as it relates to the hundreds of marketing leads that they're getting in. I'm building my credibility because I've worked with other people. I've helped other people get six-pack abs before. And then I just transitioned into the V, which is the value or impact. Let's say this trend continues for you, Lisa. What happens? What we're trying to do is help people voice what happens if they continue to go down the road they're going down. I want to hear some energy here. Well, I'm going to miss my numbers. I potentially could miss my bonus. I may have to start laying off some people. I may lose my job. These are all the things that'll happen if I stay on my current path. And then here I go with those value questions, right? This is what was happening in the bike store. You know, may I ask, do you know the difference between trigger versus traditional cold calling and how prospects respond to them in different ways? These are questions that I'm asking to get people thinking about new ideas or new perspectives, right? So in the example in the triathlon store, are you familiar with the difference between your tires and these Gator tires and their effects on triathlon finish times? No, I didn't know that. If you were selling a jacuzzi, the waiter would say, I'll just put your jacuzzi in. The personal trainer would say, hey, notice you have a teenage daughter. Have you considered putting lights in the jacuzzi so you can see what's happening back there at night? These have you considered or do you know the difference questions are the things that separate master conversations from waiter conversations. Have you considered using direct mail to increase your outreach response rates? Like, what do these questions sound like for your business? So you can get people thinking about what's possible, things they haven't considered yet. Very powerful questions. Have you considered using different outreach strategies based on the importance of your targets? These are some questions that well, what do you mean by that? And then I start to educate them on what's possible and what's going on in the industry with some of their peers. And this pulls people toward me, much more so than a waiter. Next is I start to do Q, which is qualify. If I'm this far in the conversation, this could be my fourth or fifth conversation, I want to see if people want to even change this. And this is how I ask the question. I ask it in sort of a way that gives them an opportunity to say no, right? So assume you're just seeing what's out there and aren't really looking to change anytime soon. No. We are looking to change soon. I want to know if this is something that's important to them and that's top of mind, because if it's not, I don't want to spend my time, right? So some version of, is this something you're looking to change now? I also want to know if they've ever done something like this before, because it tells me if they have precedent buying the types of things that I'm selling, right? I know I'm a unique snowflake, but have you guys ever brought in a sales mentor like me before? Yes or no? I also like to ask, who else is involved in these types of things? So the way I like to ask it in a very non-salesy, friendly way is, you're the only one that needs to weigh in on this, right? You run the joint? And people usually laugh and say, no, we got to involve Bob. And I start to get a sense of who the people that have authority are to be able to move things forward should they decide to move forward. And then very early on in the conversation, the qualify conversation, I talk about money. And here's how I talk about it very early on. Before I pitch, I say, let's talk about money. Got to know, like, do you have a Groupon? And I pause. People usually get a chuckle out. I'm trying to diffuse sales pressure. No, we don't have a Groupon. You know, at a high level, based on what you're trying to achieve, finishing the triathlon in under 4 hours requires an investment of between 15 and 20K. We take MasterCard, Visa, American Express, and we start talking about price early. They might say, I got to run this by Bob. I might say, well, how do you think he would respond? I want to get price out early after I've shown value, so we don't get to this big moment at the end where we're surprising people with it. Next, after I've done that, I want to ask people if they want to continue the conversation with me. So here's how I do it, right? Feels like we may be able to help you folks with your fireball. Based on what you told me, I've got a couple ideas right off the bat that might be helpful, but I notice we're kind of out of time. Lisa, where would you like to go from here? And your prospects will tell you. And that's such a much better position to be in than you telling them, oh, we got to rope Bob in. Well, what's his role? Well, he's in IT and he's going to want to see this. But would it make sense to put some time on the calendar tentatively, check his calendar and rope him in? Yeah, that would make sense. Lisa, where would you like to go from here, right? Or what next step, if any, would you like to take? I'm going to test to see if the prospect wants me to be their guide going forward. I want them coming to me, not the other way around. The opposite of this is saying, let's schedule some time on Tuesday. And you may be able to badger your person into scheduling another meeting, but they'll probably cancel. It's a yes trap, and they're saying it just to get you off the phone. But with this approach, you're putting your prospect in control, which is really the only way because people buy for their reasons, not yours. And you're testing to see if they want you as their guide. And it also feels a lot better. I've also said, would it make sense to rope Irina in or Lisa in or your boss in? It would. Again, we want to put your prospect in control. And that's how I end these initial first sales conversations. Before we break into Q&A, I've got a special, one more little thing. After the meeting, again, to be that personal trainer, send a little summary of what you spoke about. Nothing fancy, but just something like this. Here's what we discussed. Here's what your fireballs are. And here's what the next meeting is. You can see I have it scheduled here March 15th at 6 p.m. So one of the approaches is, if you don't have a next meeting scheduled, if your prospect hasn't agreed, It's not a real opportunity. And your prospect gets to control that, not you. If your prospect agrees to a next meeting, you send a summary of the conversation. Here's the offer. In my opinion, nothing can affect your bottom line more, your revenue or your pocketbook from a sales performance perspective than increasing your sales conversations. For free, if you go to the salesdna.co/talk page, you can select a time with me and we'll have a little conversation about your conversations. And if it's a fit, we could talk about how I can coach you on your conversations. And what that often looks like is people ask their prospects permission to record their calls. And then I analyze them with them on the phone after the conversation's over. And we kind of go through it and talk about the framework, one thing they did well, one thing that didn't go well. And after 2 or 3 conversations, they've significantly upped their game. They're spending way less time chasing and more time winning deals. So again, that's a free offer, salesdna.co/talk, to chat a little bit about your business and personalize this framework around your company.